Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Sunday night video. This week I am covering the very tragic case of John Lodge and the attempted murder of Isabella Lodge, which took place in the Gateshead area in 1878. This story is quite different to normal, so will no doubt seem a little bit different to my normal writing style as well. And it also is quite a short story compared to many others that I have written. But I hope that you will still find the story interesting. John Lodge was born in South Shields in around 1809 to parents John and Jane, and was one of at least 4 children. John had previously been married, but his wife had died, and after her death he had returned to live with his mother and his sister Isabella. And when his mother died, he shared a home with his sister. John worked as a brickmaker, and around 2 years prior to the attack on his sister, he had been involved in an accident at his workplace where a kiln had fallen on his head. This, it seems, had left him with frequent headaches, and it also seemed to have changed his personality, leaving him suffering with depression a lot of the time. He was not described as someone who was a heavy drinker. Isabella Lodge, sometimes referred to as Isabel, the victim, was born in around 1807 in South Shields, and as the sister of John, she was also the daughter of John and Jane. Isabella had never married and had lived with her mother and other members of her family her entire life. She does not seem to have had a job for most of her life, but by 1878 it seems that she is the housekeeper for her brother John. And again, she is not described as someone who likes to drink. Before we go any further, can I just say, if you do find this video interesting, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here or haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel to help support the content we create. It really is very much appreciated, and it is completely free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you any money, but it really does help to support the channel. And I would just like to add, as I always do, that I do record these stories live, so I do sometimes make mistakes, which I always try to rectify. So I hope this does not spoil your enjoyment of the video. On the 9th of February 1878, P.C. Glenn was on duty in the Bentham area of Gateshead. He was carrying out his normal rounds, which often included checking out local builders' yards to make sure that everything was okay. This night was no different, and he was on his way to the brickyard belonging to Thomas Lamb when he met a man by the name of Robert Hood, who worked there, and the 2 men went into the yard together. There were many things in the brickyard, so you would not immediately see anyone inside, and as the 2 men were walking round, they suddenly spotted a woman sitting near one of the kilns. Robert had clearly not seen her go inside earlier. As they got closer, they recognised her as Isabella Lodge. She appeared to be dressed only in her night clothes, and as P.C. Glenn shone his light onto her, they spotted her clothes were stained with blood, and she also had a cut on her hand and a large cut in her neck, which was bleeding badly. They asked her what had happened, but she was unable to speak. Isabella was able to raise her hand and point in the direction of a house close to the brickyard, and this was the house that she lived in with her brother John. Leaving Isabella with P.C. Glenn, Robert Hood set off for the house. When Robert opened the door of the house and went inside, he was met by a dreadful sight. John Lodge, Isabella's brother, was lying on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood. His throat had been cut, and a razor was lying on a table next to him. Robert realised that John was dead, and he quickly called out to P.C. Glenn to tell him what he had seen. After P.C. Glenn had inspected the scene, he and Robert Hood carried Isabella back to the house and placed her on the bed. P.C. Glenn then sent for a doctor. Dr. Elliot was quickly on the scene, and he examined Isabella. He found her to be in a very dangerous condition, and it was felt that she may not survive overnight. He also examined John and confirmed his death, suggesting that he had died sometime in the last hour. William Lodge, the brother of both John and Isabella, had been sent for, and he spoke of leaving the 2 in the house earlier that evening. He said his brother John had been in a very low mood for several days, and when he had left them earlier that night, Isabella had been trying to persuade him to eat, but he had not wanted the food. He did not feel anything else was wrong at the time he had left, and he did not hear any arguments take place. The doctor dressed Isabella's wounds, and John's body was removed from the house. An inquest was held the same afternoon at the William IV Inn at Bensham in Gateshead before Coroner Graham. William Lodge said he was a brickmaker at Gateshead, and he had identified the body as being that of his brother John Lodge. He said John lived with his sister Isabella in the cottage at Lamb's Brickyard. He said 2 years previously John had been involved in an accident at the brickyard where one of the kilns had fallen on his head. He said he had recovered from the accident but often complained of headaches, and his personality seemed to have changed. He said during the past 2 weeks John had been very depressed, but he did not suggest that John was violent in any way, and he did not mention any previous arguments between John and his sister. Dr. Elliot stated that he had visited John Lodge around a week before the crime. He had found him to be suffering with nervous debility, which is a simple way to describe someone who may be depressed, suffering from anxiety, etc., and perhaps was unable to function in what was seen as a normal manner. He said he did not believe at the time that John was a danger to anyone else, and he did not mention what treatment he had offered John for his problems. Dr. Elliot continued saying on the morning of the attack he had been called to John's home. He had felt John had been dead for around an hour. He had a large wound to his throat, and it appeared that he had tried twice to cause this cut. He was certain the wound had been caused by John himself. He stated that having also performed the post-mortem on the body of John Lodge, that death had been almost instantly caused by blood loss from the cut to his throat. Dr. Elliot added that he had also examined Isabella Lodge. She had a serious cut to her throat, and her life was in danger from this wound. She also had a cut to her hand, perhaps from trying to defend herself, and another cut on her shoulder, but neither of these wounds were serious. She was, however, still unable to give a full account of the events of the night due to the injuries to her throat. Robert Hood said he was a brickmaker at Lamb's Yard in Gateshead, and he said he had been on duty on the night of the crime, and at around 12:30 a.m. he had met P.C. Glenn outside, and the two had walked around the yard together. He said they had noticed Isabella on the ground, and when they examined her, they found her bleeding badly and unable to speak. He said after Isabella had drawn their attention to the house, he had gone to see what was wrong, and on finding John's body, he had quickly alerted P.C. Glenn to the situation. P.C. Glenn said he had gone into the brickyard with Robert Hood sometime between 12:30 and 1 a.m. He said when they spotted Isabella, he had shone his lamp onto her, and this had shown them the blood and the wound to her neck. He said he had tried to stem the flow of blood with his handkerchief, but she had pushed his hand away, trying to attract his attention to the house she lived in. He said Robert had gone to look inside and had quickly called him over. He himself had found John lying on the ground in a pool of blood. He could also see blood in many other places inside the home. Isabella's bed had blood on the sheets, and it was believed that John had attacked her while she had been sleeping. John, P.C. Glenn said, was fully dressed apart from his boots, as if he had either just returned home or was about to leave, whereas Isabella was only dressed in her nightclothes. He said they had carried Isabella back to her home and put her to bed while they waited for the doctor to arrive. He had also sent for another police officer, and P.C. Craig had been there when Isabella was brought into the house. P.C. Craig's evidence was exactly the same as that of P.C. Glenn. He confirmed finding a razor on the table in the room, which was covered with blood. No further evidence was given, and I did not find any details of the coroner summing up. The jury, who retired for only a few moments, returned the verdict that John Lodge had attempted to take the life of his sister Isabella and had taken his own life while in a state of unsound mind. It was stated in the local papers that since the crime had taken place, many people of the Gateshead area had gone to the brickyard to view the scene of the tragedy. Unlike today, when people go to lay flowers for the victims, in those days, people simply went to see where it had happened, often hoping to be able to see signs of the crime itself. somewhat similar to how people had a desire to go and watch someone who was hanged for murder. Not something that I would personally be interested in doing. Dr. Elliot also made a statement in regard to Isabella. He said he had been taking care of her since the attack, and he stated that she was now recovering well and seemed to be in good spirits. He felt that if she continued this way, there was a good chance that she would make a full recovery. Although the details were not fully covered, the funeral of John Lodge took place a short while after the inquest. The location of his burial was not mentioned, and I did not find any evidence of a headstone for John anywhere in the area. In March of 1878, Isabella made a statement about the night of the attack. She stated that she had been in bed when John had called to her to get up, telling her if she did not do as he asked, he would bite off her nose. She said she had got up and gone to where he was standing in the kitchen. He had blocked her from the door and had then got a razor and cut her throat with it. She said she did not fall to the ground, but stood quite still and watched as John attempted to cut his own throat. He then fell to the ground, and she said she forced herself to climb over him and get outside. She went into the brickyard in the hope that someone would find her and get some help. She had not been able to walk far, she said, before she had to sit down, and she had then been found by P.C. Glenn and Robert Hood. Now, this does not seem to have been an official statement, but more something that she had told her brother William, and he had passed this on to the local papers. Around 6 weeks after she had given this statement, on May the 1st, Isabella Lodge died. An inquest into her death was held again at the William IV Inn at Gateshead before Coroner Graham. Once more, William Lodge said he had identified the body as being that of his sister Isabella, who lived in Bensham in Gateshead. He stated that since his brother's death he had taken care of his sister and she had been recovering well. However, she had taken ill with bronchitis and he had sent for Dr. Elliot. However, she could not be saved. Dr. Elliot stated that he believed her death had been due to bronchitis and her weakened state due to the great loss of blood in the attack in February, and he also felt that shock from the attack would have accelerated her death. The jury simply returned a verdict of death by bronchitis made worse by the blood loss from the attempt on her life by her brother John. I did not find any evidence of a funeral for Isabella. However, I do believe that there would have been one, as there had previously been one for her brother. And again, I did not find any evidence of a headstone for Isabella anywhere in the area. This was a very, very sad case. It would seem that the accident John had in the brickyard 2 years prior to his death had caused him much more harm than had been thought. It seems that although he had been treated for depression, it was not thought that he was a danger to anyone else. But this sadly was not the case. And based on the evidence given by his brother William, it seems that in the weeks leading to the attempted murder, John had been getting much worse. Sadly, though, it does not seem that anyone saw any real signs of risk that John may snap and attack his sister, as previously said. And based on the suggestion that he was suffering with anxiety and depression, I can understand why they would not have thought this. I suffer from those things myself, and I doubt anyone would ever feel that I was a risk to anyone close to me. I would usually ask you what you thought at this point, but this case is a little different as we have no decisions by a judge or jury to wonder about. However, do you think that John's health was not looked at correctly and that perhaps with more help he may not have acted in the way he did? Or do you think this was something that simply could not have been predicted and what happened was just a tragic, unexpected end to both his and Isabella's lives? Do please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do hope that you have found this very sad and tragic story interesting. It has been a somewhat different story to usual, as for the main part, we were aware of the outcome from almost the beginning. But I still hope that you do agree that it was a story worth telling. I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again next week.